got to select your aircraft of choice after basic flight school. And I selected the F-4 Phantom, which is a two-seat jet fighter. I figured if you're going to fly, you may as well fly fast. And I flew almost every day up until February 16th of '72, which is the day we were just starting to fly combat missions over North Vietnam. So as a perspective, I was 23 years old. Even though I had training, it's still difficult when the reality hits. So we were up for a mission where we were leading a lot of flights in. I was flying as a forward air controller with my pilot, so we were a two-seater. And we got hit by fragmentation from a SAM missile, which came up from our 6 o'clock. So if you could see them, you could avoid them, but you can't always see them. And then as we ejected, we ended up landing in the village near where our plane just crashed, near where we were just bombing. So no place to run, no place to hide. None of it was good. It was all bad. 24 hours later, we were in Hanoi. I didn't know where we were, but we assumed it was Hanoi. And it ended up being a segment of the Hanoi Hilton prison camp. So that was an interesting awakening. It was uncomfortable for me in 1973 to come back to this great welcoming, to these parades of people that were so happy to see you. It was really uncomfortable because I knew 3 million veterans, got crapped on for years and years and years. So 591 of us were welcomed home, and 3 million were not.
On December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor happened, and I think as a nation, we rallied around the idea that we need to do something, right? Someone just attacked our homeland. We need to now retaliate and do something in response to it. And as a nation, I think there was consensus around that. We were victorious in 1945, and it was sort of a big sigh of relief, and a celebration of, what you just did. You ended potentially the Nazi rule of this country. And so when those veterans came home, it was a big ticker tape parade, welcome home. Going into Vietnam, there wasn't a broad consensus on why we were even doing that, but there still was a draft.
Think of Powerball today. They put 366 balls into a wheel and turned it around, and somebody went and picked out a date and said, March 22nd, that was the first number called, your draft lottery number is 1. So if you had a low draft lottery number, the next day everybody was streaming to the Guard and Reserve to get in there to avoid going to Vietnam. At that time, soldiers were treated the same that the Americans treated the government, which was they were all painted with the same wide brush, which was anti-war. And then coming back, you tried to be a civilian again, and you couldn't talk about Vietnam to anybody because nobody wanted to talk about it.
I see now, for example, you go to an airport, you see people stand and applaud when soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines come through in uniform. You see them shake their hands, show appreciation for their service. I think back to my troops in Vietnam, they never had that. As a matter of fact, their reception was hostile and negative and even aggressive at times. And so it's kind of an odd mix of being proud and appreciative that the American people have come around to that. But in some ways, because we went to an all-volunteer military, which I believe in, I think we should have and we should have, there's a greater separation or lack of connection that maybe existed when virtually every family in the United States had a member or someone they knew or were close to or from their neighborhood that was in the military. And so I feel that the danger when you have an all-volunteer military is you can become too isolated. This societal military relationship, it's not built in.
We don't decide to go into these wars. It's the political leaders in Washington, D.C. that decide where our young men and women go. And at the same time, we have the least amount of veterans serving in the United States Congress. People forget, we've been engaged in Afghanistan and Iraq since 9/11, 2001. It's now 2020, so now we're talking 19 years later. And in those 19 years, we've asked less than 1% of our country to serve in combat. It's the same folks that have gone on continuous deployments, some 4, 5, 6 times. They leave their families sometimes for over a year to go deploy and they come back. I think we've outsourced military public service to the warrior class of America. And it's for other folks to do.
Hey, hey, G.I. Joe. Hey, G.I. Joe. We off the to war, we're ready to go. We're off to war, we're ready to go. We're standing tall, we're looking good. Standing tall, we're looking good. We ought to be in Hollywood.
Early in the morning before PT, I would do PT before PT, which is 6:30 in the morning. I was addicted to that, and I just liked it. I was a glutton for punishment, I'm not gonna lie to you. I loved it. My name is Michael Woody, and I was an infantryman, 11 Bravo 4 Victor. I was third generation joining the military. My father was an Army Ranger, put a lot of time in, he put 24 years in, and I think I'm a badass like my father. I want to prove myself to be stronger than him, and I enlisted into the infantry. Actually wound up going to basic training right across the street from my father, who was a company commander in basic training, yeah.
Every year, Philadelphia has a Veterans Day parade, and 2 years ago, I was being awarded a certificate for my service, and I was looking for the parking space that I was given, and I pull over, and the individual, looks at my license plate, I hand him the form, and he was like, "Oh, what branch of service did your husband serve?" And I was like, "Well, he's a Marine, but I'm also a vet, I'm in the Army, and I'm the one looking for the parking spot." And you assume that I'm here to support my husband, that it wouldn't be me. I was like, I don't know, dumbfounded.
Growing up, she was very aggressive in everything that she did. When the Twin Towers came down, she just made up her mind that she wanted to be in the military. She wanted to defend our country.
It was in that exact moment that I was just ready to serve. Females were not allowed in combat yet. So being in the military police corps, that was kind of the closest thing that you could get to a combat MOS, and that was the most appealing to me.
Trying to find this one. My name's Tim Nguyen, United States Marine Corps veteran. I served from 1999 to 2003. I served in Iraq during the initial invasion. I got out of high school and I really wasn't college material, I guess you could say. I had nothing going on in my life and I really wanted a challenge. And what better way to challenge yourself than to join the United States Marine Corps? So, off I went. It was something that I just really thrived in, working as a unit, the brotherhood, and just being challenged and getting through things. Instantly I was hooked. It was sort of an adrenaline rush. I was just a, average Marine. There's no even thought of going to war, you know what I mean? And then obviously 9/11 happened. And, we're boarding a plane to go there. Obviously someone got to that bus before we did. Stuff just burning off. I mean, it was the highway life for us. This is actually a map of Iraq. So, in Kuwait, we'd run convoys from Kuwait all the way up, Baghdad, all the way back. Pretty much this lower right arm is just dedicated to my service. I have a hardback Humvee with a 50 cal mounted on top. I was a 50 cal gunner. I was with the military police battalion, and we did convoy security, POW handling. I mean, I did everything in that truck. Slept, ate, fought, all kinds of stuff. And Iraq convoys it's a dangerous business. So what the Iraqis were doing were they were hanging like cables across the roads. So when you're coming by on a convoy, they would like decapitate somebody. They would try to get the gunner. You're navigating through these small towns and you don't know who's your friend and who isn't, and it's pretty intimidating. So it's a high anxiety type of thing. There was no more games. It was life or death. So it was wild. Everybody's out fighting 2 wars, Iraq and Afghanistan, and there was really no time for a transition out of the military. I went in office, I signed a couple pieces of paper, and they said, "Okay, Sergeant, have a good life." And I jumped in my vehicle, headed down 95, and I'm back in Philadelphia. This is where I drove home to. This is my childhood home. This is where my family was. Right there on that tree, my uncle aunt and uncle, they had a yellow ribbon tied around the tree. And I pulled up right here, I remember it, and I had my sea bag with all my gear in it. I took it out of the trunk and threw it over my shoulder. My family didn't even know I was here yet, and I was just kind of out here. I was a little nervous to go in, to be honest with you, because I knew I was going to get 1,000 questions. I couldn't talk to my family, I couldn't talk to my mother, my neighbors, my friends about, sort of this wave of emotions I was having. And it wasn't their fault. They never experienced anything like this before either, so they didn't know what to say to me. This all happened in like 72 hours. I was transitioned out of the Marine Corps. So I get home to Philadelphia, and 4 days later, I'm arrested for aggravated assault. I got in a bar fight. I remember sitting in the 24th, 25th Police District, thinking to myself, I was just a sergeant in the Marine Corps leading Marines into combat, and now I'm, sitting in this jail cell. So I didn't stop there. I had 7 arrests after that. I spent nearly a year of my life in prison. So, yeah, it was a mess.
Being a minority as a female, I learned really quickly that I needed thick skin, that I needed to be tough, and that I needed to be physically fit. Especially with inmates, when I worked in the prison, there would be 78 inmates at any given time. And so at 18, I was sent to Guantanamo Bay, and it was packed full of the masterminds of 9/11. There could be an instance where we opened up the cell doors and they were feeling angry, and there would be an elbow to the face, a punch to the face, urine or feces being thrown at us. So that was kind of my first taste of what it was going to be like being in the military. In Iraq, the hardest part was in the beginning, learning that, when you are taking rocket fire or indirect fire and you hear the alarms going off, you freak out. And the first night that we had got there, these alarms are sounding, and I was in sheer panic. The first thing that popped in my head was, oh my God, my poor mother, this is exactly what she thought was going to happen, I'm going to die. Looking back, it's kind of silly. I think, wow, you thought that you were going to die on your first day. But it's something that has to be experienced for you to really understand. And then after a while, that becomes the new norm, so then you're not worried about it. So I think that everywhere you go, there's just different difficulties, and then you just adapt and overcome, which is the Army way.
When Erica first came back from being deployed, she had no idea of the escort that she was going to receive coming home. She had full police escort. Fire department had set up a giant flag out in front of the house, and each township that she passed through had a different escort, just to make her feel very important.
They were all thanking me for my service, shaking my hand. Tears were falling out of my eyes at this rapid rate that I'd never experienced before. And so it was like all of these emotions of being happy to see my family, happy that I was home. I'm gonna cry right now talking about it.
When she got to the driveway and saw what was set up here, we both got very emotional. And it was one of the greatest moments of both of our lives. But then there's a quiet time after that where the veteran is pretty much on their own. They're missing, the camaraderie. 2 weeks ago, they were walking down the streets of Baghdad with a rifle in their hand, and now they're in the civilian area where I can only imagine how difficult that transition is. When Erica came back as a civilian, she was having a little bit of difficulty.
I was at my mom's house, my sister's alarm was going off for school, and I freaked out. Those sounds and those things and those feelings would send me back. I would feel that.
And I would recommend that people not expect an overnight transition for a veteran. You got to give them time, let them get their heads together and ease back into society. I think that's very important.
And they all come back with some kind of baggage, even if you've never been in combat. Everybody has some kind of experience that might be debilitating or traumatizing or just out of the norm a little bit. Either you experienced it or you saw somebody else experience it and it impacted you.
My experience in the Army was good. I had to, as you know, there's a lot of personal insight and basic training, and then there's a lot of meeting of different people. I felt like I was well prepared, having been a military brat, for the adversity. So if they want you to go out across the street and dig a hole, you will dig a hole. If they tell you to put water in that hole until it stays there, and I'm telling you, things actually happen. We were out in the NTC. Anybody go to NTC?
Yes.
For Irwin? It's a beautiful place, right?
Desert.
Yeah, exactly.
Cactus.
Yeah, my first unit I had a squad leader who was just did not like me.
And I realized that he was like starting to focus on me a little too much, just a little extra. So my counter was to try to work out more at home.
I don't want to get yelled at for not running fast. I opening the book and reading about my infantry tactics.
And I realized that there's no amount of preparation and no amount of working out I was gonna make him stop.
So I'm in this system, and this guy's able to do whatever he wants to do. And he called me NWA, the rap group.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
We were coming out about that time.
He called me a nigga with an attitude in the middle of the desert.
I didn't like it, of course, but I tried to be as subordinate as I could. But he would not give me any credit. He was not going to promote me. He was not going to let me go anywhere else. He just wanted to control everything about me.
He said I was lying about keeping communication. And then he pushed me and I fell over my rucksack.
We wound up in a big fight. He contacts our platoon sergeant and says I attacked him for no reason. Lucky for me, one of my cohorts, he decided to tell the truth about the whole situation.
And what they did is they wound up moving me to another company.
2 weeks after I showed up, out of 16,000 people, I won a Division M60 machine gun competition. And then I had the highest physical fitness score in the company.
So I got this, hey Woody, guess what? Friday, you're going to pre-ranger school. We started 45 people in a pre-ranger school and 7 people graduated.
And they're like, who's this? Where'd this guy come from? And man, I'm like, I came from fear. I came from fear.
At that point, to be honest with you, that kind of changed my adulthood. You know, it wasn't combat, it was this guy.
I was always insecure. I was always in fear. I think that's something that people don't talk about.
And if you think historically about the African American soldier's experience, part of it's always been that we've always wanted to belong. The problem is that when you do everything to belong, and then you're still not accepted. So I can imagine how crushing that can become, because then it begins to look like everything else. It begins to look like the school system that didn't give you the necessary resources. It begins to look like the employment opportunities which say that African Americans are ultimately to blame for the outcomes. So again, here we are in the system, being the military, where you expect to be judged by your character, by your production, by what you're capable of doing. And when it doesn't happen, that's crushing.
I think, when you're in the military, it's hard to think about what life post-military is going to be like because of how military indoctrination happens.
I was told what to do. You follow orders. And then when you get out, that's not there anymore. So you wake up and there's no one telling you what to do or where to be or what time formation is or what your job is.
They come into a life now once they leave that isn't as orderly, isn't as clear. There isn't someone giving orders. And I would be quite frank with you, I always thought that I would have an easy adjustment after the military, but the change is significant.
It was a really hard transition for me. For about 6 months or so, I lived at home and worked at a bar and was just kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and I just was miserable.
She was sort of, I wouldn't say the word floundering, but she was searching for her niche, her passion, And that's a lot of veterans are in that same boat. Who am I after the military? What is my identity? How can I provide meaning and make an impact? And for some, being in a school system is perfect.
Right now in colleges across America, there's 1.1 million students that are going to college on a post-9/11 GI Bill. It has been a game changer for the veteran community.
I knew that college was probably something that I should do, also something I should have taken advantage of while I was enlisted and didn't. And so I exited the military and I was angry. Starting school as a miserable human probably wasn't the best. And then being seated next to 18-year-old students who were complaining that the Starbucks line was too long or that it was snowing outside and they ruined their new Uggs. I just wanted to be like, are you kidding me? Like, these are your problems. You're worried about your Uggs when I watched 4 or 5-year-old little kids in Iraq walking barefoot on broken glass and sand and just trash, and I was just like furious. And I was like, God, we're so ignorant. I don't feel that way now. I think that I was just looking for an excuse to just be an angry veteran because it was easier than trying to understand the teenager that I was next to who maybe didn't know what was going on. And so I eventually started taking that opportunity to educate instead of just hate. And so then I ran for leadership in the student veterans group, and I became the first female president of the group. And with that, we kind of started connecting with the university so that students would say, hey, that guy with the beard isn't just a weird old man. Like, he's actually pretty cool. We actually have things in common. And so freshman year of college, being this angry Erica, just wanted to throw my books at everybody's face, to senior year, some of my best friends are 5 years younger than me, but are civilians, and they were the 18, 19-year-olds, and I tell them all the time, I'm like, I hated you, and you're stupid, latte, and I just remember being so judgmental. I was everything I hated. I was everything that I wanted to get rid of, and I had to do some deep reflection to kind of change that.
She really wasn't much of a student. She was a C student at best, and when she was finished with the military and went to Westchester University, she graduated cum laude. So that gives you some idea how she matured.
By the time I went to Iraq, I had put 15, 16 years in the military. You know, when I came back, the jobs that were offered to me, working in the prison, you could be part of our SWAT team, and I didn't want to carry a gun anymore. I just wanted to be an executive, you know, partake in the American dream. So I went to the Villanova Executive MBA program with the hope that I could fit in to the civilian population. We all get invited to the first class where we meet all of our classmates. I already feel different because I'm the only minority. No, I take that back. I'm the only black guy, you know? And as they're going person to person, everybody has this vice president, own their own company, district manager. I just don't have that story. I just don't have that story. And the closer it was getting to me, I was getting fearful of what to say. I couldn't talk about my deployment in Iraq. I couldn't talk about my favorite job, you know. I definitely couldn't talk about some of the stuff that I seen. I didn't know what to say. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I didn't have any business background to export. And it was the beginning of me recognizing that I had issues with myself. And I realized when somebody asked me, you know, what have you been doing the last 21 years? I'm stuck. I think a lot of military veterans don't understand there's an identity that you once had that you have to let go, you know? And that's when I actually started going to the VA.
You use any benefits from the VA?
I don't go there often, but I go enough to get my medication, talk to a therapist there.
I do the same thing. You know, I was struggling inside. And I know you guys know what I'm talking about.
That's a long story, but there was this derogatory name that they called me. My last name is Sampson. The master sergeant called me Samba. I was called that name for a few years and didn't stand up for myself.
Well, what's interesting about what you're saying is racial trauma is something that they're talking about more and more often now. For African Americans, in most cases, we've always been taught to try to push past it or not consider it or wanted everything to be fair. When at the same time, some of the realities that we're left to live with is that many of our situations were never fair. And I wonder what that experience is like when a veteran actually feels that aloneness.
The more meetings I was going to, I said, wow, there's a story here about the racial trauma. They, like me, found it difficult to transition.
You know, in the Army, you got badges and stuff. You got position, you got honor, you got rank. And as soon as we got out, it was like they took that away. You know, nobody was recognizing what I said, what I did. So it was kind of hard.
My plan was just to be ready to get a job and then work within the company like I was used to, 21 years in the Army. I had set up so many interviews and No businesses wanted to hire me.
I'm thinking for sure, man, I'm a veteran, got back from the war, combat vet, I got a degree, nothing. Nobody was picking me up. I couldn't believe it.
In my mind, I'm like, they could see a whole body of work. This person works hard, he adjusts to whatever environment he does. He needed education, he got a degree from Temple, now he's getting an MBA from Villanova. You know, people would, hey, thank you for your service, but not at my company.
So I had 7 arrests and spent a year of my life in prison. I had a young daughter, an infant during that time. I wasn't in her life for the first 4 years of her life because I was using drugs and alcohol and in and out of prison. Unfortunately, I used to frequent these jails quite often. I was dealing with a lot of mental illness and drug addiction, and I ended up sitting in here for it. I had no idea what I was actually dealing with internally. Really didn't know what was going on. I found out later that I was, dealing with some effects of post-traumatic stress and my experience, what I just went through. And at this point, I'd gotten so much medication from the VA, and I abused those medications. People always ask me, like, well, why did you do that? Well, because it's 100% effective. It works every single time. To drown out those emotions, you take a couple pills and drink some alcohol. Everything goes away. Problem is, it's still there when the drugs and the alcohol wear off. So I'm in the prison, and I was in the mental health unit, and I was shackled, and they were taking me to see this doctor, and this doctor wanted to give me more medication. I'm arguing with this doctor. I said, I don't want any more medication. The door slides open, and in walks a man. I never met him in my life. He says to this doctor, can I talk to him for a minute? He wasn't a doctor, he wasn't a therapist. What he really was a Vietnam veteran. So he spoke sort of my language. And he says, Tim, the person you were before you left is gone forever, and they're never coming back. We need to find a different way to combat what you're feeling and what you're going through. I knew inside myself, inside my soul, that I was different, and I just kind of wanted to feel like the person I was before I went over there. I thought I could without any help, and in reality, I couldn't. I needed help. And for a Marine that's trained to, get up and go, and sort of, the motto is embrace the suck. When you come back to civilian life, it's really not that easy. I thought about that often, and eventually I got tired of thinking that way. I got tired of being hard on myself and having to internally correct myself and say, stop being an asshole. And I decided to surrender. Sometimes you got to surrender to win, and I made that conscious decision internally to do that. And this building here is the place where I went to my first AA meeting. I put all my depression and anger and everything else in a bottle or a fistful of pills. And that was the worst thing to do. But I learned why we do it, and that's a part of recovery. It's knowing what your driving force to your addiction is. And I learned that here, man. Just like in the military, the people in this building stuck together. They called me and checked on me, when I didn't really care about myself. They actually picked up the phone, and it was important to me at that time, where I was in my recovery. Everything is salvageable. Nothing is completely broken. Just because you're at your lowest point and you're sitting in prison doesn't mean that you can't get out of that and climb out of the hole and build yourself back up. January 4th, I'll have 11 years clean and sober. And even with 18 months clean and sober, I got a new arrest, and we'll call this a road rage incident. What I found through that arrest was you can put the drugs and alcohol down, but if you never work on the mental health part of it, you can't fully recover.
Physical wounds are easy to fix. They're certainly easy to recognize. It's the mental and emotional ones that are really tough. And it's tough because they don't want to admit a failing. They don't want to admit weakness. They bury guilt, or they just are really uncomfortable talking about what they had to do. So I also try to let them know, don't do what Ralph Galati did. Don't wait 25 or 30 years to get some treatment. So I got really lucky in that I was in for a VA physical, and somebody looked at my records and said, oh, you were a POW. I said, but I don't see PTSD anywhere in your records. And I gave the usual answer, which is, I'm okay. And the guy says, I don't think you're okay. And he says, there's a psychiatrist next door I want you to talk to.
When a veteran is struggling with a mental health issue, the biggest thing they need is help. but the training that they received in the military really does a poor job of showing us that it's okay to ask for help. So that's a big conflict.
There are veterans who fall through the cracks. Veterans are more likely to be homeless. Veterans are more likely to take their own life. And we do have an ethic that we leave no one behind. My team of 7, we came home okay in one piece, but one was struggling. You know, he was struggling for a couple of years, and I offered him a job, and I said he could sleep on my couch, etc. And you know, he's no longer with us today, and you know, that weighs my heart. The fact that there's 20 veterans a day and 2 active troops that commit suicide and take their own life makes me appreciate that I'm still here, but also gives me guilt that I have to do more. It's incumbent on all of us to wrap our arms around those 1%ers that have served the longest wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, to see how they're doing, how they could be helpful, and more importantly, help guide them to live a purpose-driven life.
When Erica came back, when she was finished her 8 years, she was lucky to have her family support her, but not everybody has that.
They would not let me be alone. They would not let me have the opportunity to go down that dark hole, and then I would feel guilt because I would see that happening to people. Since I've been out of the military, 2 of my former soldiers died by suicide. And it's awful to hear. It's traumatic, and it makes me sick to my stomach. And just this morning, I was having a conversation with someone who got word that one of his friends, same thing. And it's just like, it's not just a statistic, it's really happening. And it's happening to our friends. It's happening to the people who were alongside us and who, you know, we laughed with, joke with, and like that needs to be fixed.
It shouldn't be a veteran's duty to remind the country that I am part of this. You understand that we are in this thing together. So when we come back, you're supposed to have our backs.
You know, I have seen the transition from both sides, obviously being in the military and coming out myself. And then I've been on the other end. I mean, I've headed up corporations where we hired a number of veterans and in some cases sought veterans. It's important for veterans to understand which of their skill sets will apply to whatever civilian organization they're going into, what skill sets are seen as strengths, but also to understand differences.
A lot of times I would talk to veterans, they would have no concept of how their skills fit into the regular workforce. So I would sit down with them to help them put together their resume, just to help them look at marketable or transferable skills, and it wasn't something that was easily interpretable.
A lot of the transition is find out my identity. People see me a certain way, which I don't see that they see, and I really just recently have started to understand what that is for business.
I wasn't the same guy walking in to the military that I was coming out. And I realized I had this knack for helping other people be fearless, to do their best.
The military brings things like a tremendous work ethic into an organization. Their leadership skills are exceptional because from the time they come in, they're trained and educated to be leaders, and they have leadership experience.
So I started my own company, and my vision was to have an organization of veterans translating what we did as far as leadership and taking it to companies and give them a real time, hey, this is what you really look like in front of people. Organizations invite me to talk about my experience.
Now, what I do is I teach leadership because of what I experienced, and because I had some amazing experiences when I was in charge.
I want to make sense of the pain I went through and the pain I understand of others and try to help them through that.
I'm blessed. I know I'm blessed because when I talked about Sambo, that happened in 1983. I ain't never talk about that to nobody. I never talked about it, but as we sat through here, I said that was 3 years of abuse. I put that thing in my spirit and locked it up in the box and forgot about it.
I honestly understand for myself that I let several situations that were racial in nature in the military, I've been hanging on to them. And it's okay if we talk about it.
So physical fitness in the military is everything. The first question that people are gonna ask you is, what's your PT score? How fast do you run? How many push-ups can you do? Especially being a female, because they look at us and they're like, yeah, well, of course you scored a 300, which is the max score, because you only had to do 17 push-ups. So I made sure that they went first. Maybe they did 47 push-ups, I would do 48, because I didn't want them to hold that over me. The gym while deployed or overseas became my therapy because it gave me something to strive for, knowing that I was going to be the guy next to me.
Today, where she is she's opened up her own fitness studio called Dub Fitness, where she works exclusively with women, and she really works on empowering them and changing not just their physical well-being, but really their mental health. And I think if you were to talk to her today, she's bubbling over with excitement and energy because she's found that meaning and impact that she was looking for post-military.
Monday through Friday, my alarms go off, I get ready for work, and I'm here by like 3:55. I walk in, I open up, and my motto has been that every single person walking through my door will be greeted by their name and with a smile.
They come in here like ready to work. So at 5 o'clock, I don't even have to say warm up. Look, they're already outside running 400 meters and it's 22 degrees outside. I guess I just kind of have respect for women who will get up at 4:15 in the morning to make it here.
They are going to get energy at 4 a.m. So today's workout is in honor of yesterday, and today is arm. So we're doing Armistice Day. Get it? Do we get it? All right. All right, 11 minutes on the clock. Here we go. 3, 2, go. So 11 burpees. Remember, you are not slamming your hips onto the floor. Your hands are flat. We don't do burpees from our thumbs. 2 pounds of pressure to break that bad boy off. All right, down, all the way down, chest to deck. Good, ladies, good. It's exhausting, it's a lot. You need to break it down into segments of 4 or 5. Do that. They just need a place in life, and I feel that that's what I give. I will do my best to let that woman have purpose again, because that's what gets people out of bed in the morning. And I tell them that they are what gets me out of bed in the morning, because I don't know where I would be if I didn't have this. So we kind of help each other out. It's not just vets, but we stay very close and intertwined with the veteran community, and they love being a part of it. We celebrated Veterans Day yesterday. It's bigger than you. Push yourself a little further, work a little harder. When you start to feel tired, you want to stop. Think about why we're doing this workout, right? I take on a leadership role here with the women, just as I did as a staff sergeant in the Army. So when deployed, it was my job to make sure that they knew the mission. It was my job to make sure that they all made it home. Every single woman that comes in here, I take on as my own. They're my problem, they're my baby, they're my children. So it's just kind of being a servant leader, being down there with them and showing them that it is possible. Meeting new females and sharing stories, it gives me something to look forward to. Talking and knowing that I'm not the only one who feels a certain way, it's almost like it's therapy. 45 seconds. You can do anything for 45 seconds, right? 3, 2, time. Good job, ladies, all right. Grab some water, rack your dumbbells. Female service members are the most visible individuals. All eyes are on us, A, because we're either not fit enough because the PT standards were different, or if the service member was pretty, she got special treatment because she looked good. And it's just, there's always these stereotypes. And then when we leave, it's like we don't even exist. Females in the military, that's not a thing. Or we're fragile and no one wants to talk about us. I have a couple-hour break, and in that break, I work on the nonprofits that I'm associated with. We try to build up veteran-owned businesses by connecting them with people where we think that they can be successful and thrive.
And now to see her be a leader in what's called GPVN, the Greater Philadelphia Veterans Network. I remember saying to her, You're awesome. Like, how can it be helpful?
I'm Erica Webster. I own Dub Fitness. My gym is all women, so a referral for me is any female, any age. I do youth, I do people with disabilities. My oldest client is 99, my youngest is 9. So that's a good referral for me. My focus is on vets. Reach out for help. And if I can't help you, I know that there's somebody in my network who I can say, this person needs help. And then when that's over, I go back to my fitness cap and I teach my night classes and my night clients. And then I squeeze in some time with my husband between 9 and 10 p.m.
You know, it's not easy to start your own business. You're going to fail a lot of times. She took a chance and she risked a lot, and now she has a very successful studio, and I think where that goes from here on out is, you know, up to her.
I don't care that I get 3.5 to 4 hours of sleep a night, because guess what? I get to sleep, I have a job, and I have a voice. I almost feel like I'm also paying it forward, and that I'm like making up for the people that really did have a really hard time or aren't here anymore. And you know, so I was in Iraq, my sister was in Afghanistan, and we both made it home. And I think that both of my parents felt like they have to pay it forward. And so my dad really dug into an organization where he welcomes home soldiers at the airport. So at 4 a.m., my dad is standing at the airport because he says that no one should ever come home to no one.
I would like to see people go above and beyond. I mean, our service to veterans goes beyond handshakes and a pat on the back. And if we can make that much difference in the veteran's life, that's what it's all about. You know, make them feel, you know, like what they did was something worthwhile, and it's appreciated.
He is now the Pennsylvania State Coordinator, and I think that he might be the only civilian in the group, and he wears a patch on his vest that says, "I wasn't there, but I still care."
I think back on all the things that I'd been through, sort of the emotional roller coaster. It was, you know, sort of through the ringer. And once I got to the Veterans Court, when I came in here as a defendant, that's where I learned to actually deal with the mental health part. That was a game changer for me. My mentor at the time was a guy named Mike Brown, who worked at the Department of Behavioral Health. He was a veteran, and he was there every step of the way.
And what I saw in Tim was someone who was genuine about recovery. He couldn't see his daughter anymore, and that was very, very painful. And I think that was really the driving force for him. And so then from treatment, he started to have better reactions for moments that would usually trigger, you know, massive blow-ups with his anger. He was responding better, and it was actually working. And then he started to hit it like a real, true Marine. He put every ounce of energy into that recovery.
I wound up getting 14 charges expunged off my record with the help of the Veterans Treatment Court team here in Philadelphia. And so I got those cleared up, so I still had these convictions on my record. I had to get interviewed by parole officers, people to speak on my behalf, and I think I got over 240 letters. When I stepped in front of the actual Board of Pardons in Harrisburg, the Board of Pardons saw that I was a changed individual. I had made some mistakes, and I got 5 yeses. Then it was up to the governor. Within 3 months, he signed my pardon, and I am currently without a criminal record.
So he's just one shining example of how you can be an asset after trauma. He's really grown from that, and now he's sharing that with society.
I was a construction worker, man, you know what I mean? And I'm a recovering drug addict and alcoholic. I didn't know nothing about being in an office. But Mike Brown, in his infinite wisdom, thought, you know, maybe we could use Tim to help more veterans. And he actually called me and he said, listen, we have a position at the Department of Behavioral Health as a peer specialist. And I began to come back to this court and help with the veterans who were walking through the door. One of the greatest things I get to do here at the Philadelphia Veterans Court is we go to Equine Therapy. I've been going up there, I guess, for about 3 years now. I'm pretty much a cowboy at this point. You ready? Come on. I remember when I first came here, there's no way I would be in here with them running around like that. Yeah. Scared to death. She's sort of the head honcho here. She looks over everybody else. Right, Teak? Look out for me, don't you? Yeah, it's okay. She lets me kind of know, you know, exactly where I'm at, right? It's different now for me, but I still get, you know, beat down sometimes, and I'm able to come here and sort of unwind, relax, and get away from that. One of the things that I keep with me is, yeah, I know this is yours. There's a lock of her hair. So when I'm not here, I kind of take this out. It has sort of a calming effect. It gets me through some bad times, that's for sure. It's definitely, yeah, this is you. She's like, I know. It's amazing how much healing power that animals, especially horses, have for veterans, because they're so much like us. They're full of anxiety. They're prey animals. They move in packs, sort of like a platoon does. So they're very similar to us, and they can teach us a lot about what we're going through. You know, again, I'm a city boy and I've never been around these horses, but it's something that I think I'll do for the rest of my life. Today I work in this building, which I was once a defendant in, and I'm here every single day, so this place is special to me because this is where I get to help veterans who are going through the same things that I once went through. It's absolutely tremendous what happens here and how these individuals turn their lives around. And I get to come here every single day and help the younger version or the older version of me that's walking through the door get through this process, and it's a beautiful thing.
So you have a guy like Tim Nguyen who's doing incredible stuff on his day job in Veterans Court. And now to see what he's doing with the Flyers Warriors. It's an all-veteran team, and veterans who are partially disabled or wounded warriors. And hockey is all about teamwork. Hockey is all about that grit, about that warrior ethos. And he is getting after it.
And you're coming on the ice, right? It's just very important for the success of veterans to be around other veterans, and that's what the Philadelphia Flyers Warrior team provides.
We're just not playing hockey. We're here to create a community, and we're here to get better as a community. Hockey's just a part of what we're doing. That's what we want, going after loose pucks. That's what we want, forechecking. That's what we want, going after the puck in the corner. Always chasing, always pressure. When they come home, it's like, what do you miss? It's the camaraderie, it's being together, and a sense of purpose, if you will.
You gotta move as a unit, you gotta practice as a unit, you gotta sharpen your skills just like you would in the military, and that hockey team builds everybody up. We'll stick together.
Yeah, man.
So you say you've been miserable lately?
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets like that, man.
It's just good to get out, clear your mind.
Hockey makes it all better, don't it? The Philadelphia Flyers Warriors hockey program. It's not just a team, it's a family.
Sometimes disabilities get in the way, but I like to try to come if I can be here. Even if I can't skate, I like to support my guys.
Wow, Jay's here. How you feeling, bud?
I'm all right. I have epilepsy because of my TBI.
You don't even feel come on, do you? You just go into a seizure?
It was 5 o'clock in the morning.
Wow, man.
Sleeping.
Yeah. Well, get better, bud. You know we miss you. My man.
You know, things that we've seen, done, it's nothing can compare out on the civilian world. That's one common bond that we share.
I mean, me personally, I didn't know that I needed any sort of help or camaraderie. I thought I just wanted to play hockey and thought it was going to be good for other people. So in my head, I was building this to help other veterans, and it turned out I needed a lot of things a lot more than I realized I did.
Staying busy with stuff like this, with guys that have been through the same stuff you have, is priceless.
Good job, new guy.
Hey, it's your first day here today, huh?
Good job, buddy. I'm Tim.
This was my first practice, and it was great.
You'll fit in, bud.
I've been playing. Met a bunch of these guys. They were awesome dudes. Everybody treats you like family here.
Okay. It was good practice. What defined it was our attitude. Keep that in mind. Our attitude's going to define our success. If we listen to that, man, things are going to happen. So remember that. We actually competed in the Warrior Cup in Las Vegas, and it's our first year in existence, and we won a championship. We're the champs. You got to come through us now.
Tim Nguyen's one of those folks that is the epitome of a hockey player. He's tough, he's strong, he's smart, but he's selfless.
This is Fiona, she's 6. Sienna, she's 12. Maeve, she's 2. And my wife, Nicole. She'd tell you I'm still a pain in the ass, but I'm not that pain in the ass anymore. I went to go file for custody for my daughter, or at least try to see my daughter. And I had a year sober at that point. And we got to the courthouse, and I remember walking down the hallway, and I remember her laying eyes on me and her just, you know, breaking down and crying. She finally came over to me. She said, I can tell just by looking at you that you're a different person now. This is my little guitar player. She's real into music, and we have a lot in common. You have a preference? Yeah, if I handed her a cassette, she wouldn't even know what to do with it. All right, go ahead.
When your legs don't work like they used to before, and I can't sweep you off of your feet.
You know, I missed the first 4 years of that. And looking back on it now, I was in no way, shape, or form to be a father at that time. I regret every second of that, but you know, today I'm able to be her dad. I'm able to guide her. You know, I put my wife through hell. I really did. And one of the things that I'll always be grateful for is she never talked bad about me. She never told my daughter, you know, anything negative. She used to tell my daughter that Daddy got sick in the war and he was in a hospital. So I'm grateful for that. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service to others.
I messed it up.
I think we owe more to them to be sure that when they're done their service, we take care of them. There are benefits out there that we said that they should get, and we should be sure that they get them.
It's your deeds, not your words, that have the most meaning or have the most impact. I think there are mechanisms or ways to say thank you for your service by your actions.
It is amazing what they can do, the men and women of the United States military, and what they can achieve for their country and for what we stand for.
And that's the reality of the situation when you serve in the military. It's sobering. It's soul-crushing at times when you know someone that gives the ultimate sacrifice. But it's also, for some, the greatest things that they'll ever do in their life.
So when the Nova team contacted me, I had no interest in doing the film initially. I was in school, I was very busy, but they told me what it was about. I had to take it on. I transitioned out of the Army last year, so I figured, yes, I can definitely help bring something to this. So I start watching the film, and the first thing a composer does is forget about the music, focus on the people, the story, the plot. So I'm listening to Erica's and Tim's and Mike's story, and I forget that I'm composing this, and all of a sudden I feel like I'm relating to everything they're saying. And even though all of our stories were totally different, it was hitting way too close to home. And for a long time I believed that transitioning is black and white. You just move forward. And this film taught me a lot about my own story, that it's not black and white. That the reason they called this film Warrior Class is because you're now a new class of people, and you always will be. You're always a soldier.